This is the Palisados Foundation. Palisados was created by a group of expat Jamaican IT professionals to provide equitable access to life opportunities for STEM students. Most specifically, we do this by promoting software engineering education internships for university students on the island. Each student works on one of our open source projects under the mentorship of an IT professional. Stipends are paid upon achieving predefined goals. This program is called the Calico Challenge. The IT sector is a dynamic, growing, and critical international industry that can provide significant financial growth and opportunity for our community. Our internship programs allow local IT professionals to globally compete. We started in 2016. Almost 40 students have completed the program. We have had a variety of current and past Jamaican sponsors, including the NCB Foundation, the JPS Foundation, the Grace Kennedy Foundation, the JMMB Group, Rail Decoy, Sutherland, Backyard Restaurant, Simtai Consulting, Vertis Technologies, the Jamaica Computer Society, and more. In this video, we'll be featuring the work done by students on the Pattoo project. Pattoo is a suite of software applications that gather and present time series data. In other words, data that changes over time. This could be computer system performance, stock market prices, or foreign exchange rates. Specialized software agents collect this data and send it to the central Pattoo server for storage. We also have guides on how to create agents for your specific needs. The data on the central server can be accessed easily using either the Pattoo mobile app or via the web. Let's take a look and see what the students did in 2020.
Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Henry, and I'll be presenting on my contribution to this year's Calico Challenge. My partner and I were assigned to work on the Pattoo mobile application. On today's agenda, I'll be speaking on the challenges faced, the web project overview, and the tools I've used and what I've learned. I had two main issues at the beginning of this project. One being working with new people. Since I'm used to working on school projects where I know from the start the persons I will be grouped up with, this was new territory as I had to learn to adapt to different programming styles, speeds, and communication frequencies of each member of the mobile team. I was also very new to Flutter and Dart in the beginning, which caused friction to be a bit slow at the start, but as the project progressed, this became less of an issue. The project was done over a 3-month period. I will divide the overview by describing what was done each month by them the June milestone, July milestone, and August milestone. In June, given the project was started from scratch, we did not have a working example to work from. We thus had to put ourselves in the place of the user and determine what features would be best. It was decided that the user should be able to log in, create charts, switch between dark mode and light mode, and manipulate favorites, among other features. Starting off, my team had to just create the initial designs which should be used to work on the general flow of the application. In July, once my partner connected the server to the app, I started to work on allowing the user to retrieve, add, and rearrange favorites. Since Pattoo stores a long list of time series data, we determined that allowing the user to be able to find those that they deem important would increase the user experience. In August, I was focusing on authenticating the user and completing the drag and drop feature, and updating the documentation and making small adjustments based on feedback from our assigned mentor and our supervisor. And what I've learned. Sphinx, which is a documentation tool, I didn't have any experience with it prior, but I learned a lot about it during the 3-month period. Flutter, I was new. I had some small experience with it, but I learned a lot more over the time. And GraphQL, which I had no experience prior with, I learned a lot about as well. I would say I benefited greatly from this program. Again, a lot of experience coding, met some interesting people, improved my problem-solving skills as well, and I highly recommend other students to apply as well. And suggestions for future development. I think the UI as it is okay, but it could be better. So if we were to continue to work on it, there could be some adjustments and some improvements there. And also, if there are either export or share graph feature, since if the users were to update or make some changes to the charts, it would be unique to their login alone. So if they were able to share the graph or the chart to whoever who may concern, that would they would benefit from that as well. And that's the end of my presentation. Thanks. If you have any questions, proceed to ask.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Tahjyei Thompson, and I'm a part of this year's Calico Challenge 2020. So I started this internship on the 28th of May, and so far it has been a very good experience for me. I feel as if I've grown as a developer. So on today's agenda, I'll be speaking about the overview of the project and the lessons I've learned, along with suggestions for future development. So the project I was assigned to is called Pattoo, and as my mentor, Mr. Harrison, said earlier, it's really used to capture time series data via agents. And we were tasked with developing a mobile app that will visualize the data captured by Pattoo, similar to the web application. We built this application using Flutter, a Dart framework, and the time period we took was over a 3-month span. So on my first month, seeing that it was my first experience using Flutter, it was initially a learning experience. It wasn't so challenging as I've had a background working in a similar object-oriented language. And the first thing I did was organize the structure of the project. Then, as my partner Shannon said earlier, she was the one primarily working on the design, and I aided her in translating design to code, along with implementing the dark mode feature. And at the end of the month, I began making an interaction with the API to the application of the Live Pattoo server that we have working. And I was able to complete all these tasks within the first month. Next, I'm going to show you the preview of how the application looked after the first month. This is the initial login screen, agent screen, and the display message you get when there's no API connected, and the data point listings along with the settings screen. Now, on the second month working on this project, I've gotten a little more familiar with Flutter, and we began taking it to the next step to add the MVP for this application, which is displaying charts for each data point. This took me about 2 weeks to accomplish because it wasn't as easy as I thought it would have been. I had to do a lot of research and look into a whole lot of different packages online that would allow for this. But nonetheless, it was accomplished. And the next big thing was added multi-line feature that could allow up to 7 different data points to be rendered on one chart. This isn't a feature that the web application has, but given that we have added this might have motivated the web team to implement this as well, their side. And after this was completed, I began allowing for a user to save this rendered different amount of charts into a chart group. So I added chart grouping, and similar to the first month, I was able to accomplish all my tasks. And here is a preview of what was accomplished within that second month. Now we're able to see the chart rendered on chart screen, along with the metadata that follows it, along with the chart group page. So on month 3, we had several discussions about how the application looks and feel at the moment, and we had decided that it needed to be a little more modern. The old look wasn't really that satisfying. So first, month 3, you updated the application UI to look a bit more modern. Along with where we realized that if we had tried to run the application on a different device or orientation, it looks a bit stretched out in some instances, or some things don't even show, and the red screen of death comes up. So we had to update the code to make it responsive to different orientation and different device screens. And once this was accomplished, we added more chart modification features such as pan and zoom in, renaming the charts, and deleting charts. And these tasks was also completed. And this is how the application looked after month 3. We added a navigation bar along with updated the different icons we used and the shapes of the cards. And similar to that on the data point agent listing, the chart screen didn't get much modification as it was already satisfying. Now, throughout this internship, there were a couple more lessons I picked up from both my teammates and mentors, and overall the entire experience. So the first thing was that proper communication among teams. This leads to a better workflow and understanding of every member's role. Another thing I picked up was being a lone wolf isn't good for the team. This wasn't something I per se showed, but it was something I could relate to being a university student and being in situations in which I feel like I could just do the group project because I feel like I'd be faster. But I didn't have that. I didn't experience that working on this team. My team was really good. And I believe with this mentality that you can do it all makes a team more dependent on you and will ultimately affect the team's dynamic. And lastly, understanding the theory instead of copying code. A lot of us university students, when we encounter a wall, especially in our code, we decide to go on like Stack Overflow and look for a simple solution and just copy and paste instead of just understanding why the code is written like that, what's actually happening, what fundamental is at play here. With this lesson, I'm able to write more concise and readable code. And when you understand theory behind certain implementations, even debugging and testing is done easier with this mindset. So for suggestions for future development of the mobile app, firstly, because I believe we were amateurs that were developing a mobile app, so I think a different architectural approach would be feasible, one that allows for more understood changes to the repository, and this separation of the different packages, because this could be just a bigger project. So the way it is right now might seem a little clustered, and that should really change. Along with exporting the data from Pattoo, because we already have all this captured data from in our servers. Like we should be able to export this data to like a report or even just the image of the charts really, and the metadata. And lastly, I believe should be UI UX design, because even though we took a different approach to the UI, it still could be better because none of my teammates are really UI UX designers. So I believe that the internship could allow for students with this background to come on board and work on the project and apply those skills. And now for the resources I used when working on this project. So first and foremost, the Pattoo documents, the official Pattoo documents written by the Pattoo team. That was about 3 to 4 years in the making. Yeah, it was really helpful to understand the entire what Pattoo does. And Stack Overflow, whenever my mentors couldn't aided me in a way directly with the code, I just go on Stack Overflow and ask some questions and get some professional advice. The persons who are very seasoned in like the Flutter framework, along with the Flutter official docs, backed by Google, of course, and the Flutter team. Yeah, this was really helpful when I was starting to learn Flutter. And PhilStacks, which is a Flutter community team that I've been following up with. They provide really good Flutter tutorials and it's completely open source. And now to conclude this presentation, I'm going to do a brief demonstration of the application so far. So we have the initial login screen, which we just enter a user that's already in the system. Next, we are presented with the display message that tells us that there is no Pattoo API connected. So we need to go to the settings page and add an instance of a live Pattoo server. So we're using the single Calico Pattoo server. And once it's been validated, it's going to redirect us back to the home page. And we have the listing of the various agents. Once we click on a tile, it will show the different data point agents for that specific agent. And what we're showing is the preview data, like the last value that was captured by Pattoo, with the metadata. And once we click on these tiles, we go directly to the chart screen, and you see the chart rendered for the specific data point agent. And below it, you can see that we are able to show data that's a day old, or a month old, or a year old. Now, another thing, like I mentioned earlier, you're able to render multiple different data points on one chart, up to 7. So, and they can be from different agent groups as well. Once this has been rendered, you'd see that the different data points have different labelings for the key. So when the landscape changes, you'll be able to see the legend, but unfortunately, my device wasn't downloading for this at the moment. And once you can see the added data point to the metadata below. You can even remove it if you want to. But if you're satisfied, you can save this to a new chart group, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to call this new Pattoo group. And then a successful message will be presented to the user. And we can quickly navigate to the groups page. And once it's loaded up, we're going to see the new Pattoo group. And it's rendering both data points that were saved earlier. And we can even rename the group. Let's call this old Pattoo group. Mistake. There we go. And I'm going to demonstrate the favorite screen now. This is a list of the favorite data point charts for a specific user. And you can even reorder them, and it would save even in the server. It would save the ordering as well. And lastly, I'm going to show you the dark mode feature to show how the application looks like. Ensure to use very similar shadings of one color. And that was essentially what me and my team were able to accomplish during our internship period. Thank you. Any questions?
So thank you very much. We've got a question from Sheldon Provost. He's asking what advanced charting options are available. For example, log scale, trend lines. What types of interpolation is used for the line plots? There's very many questions. So let's just start with those, and then we'll continue with some of the other questions that he has.
Okay, let me preview. Scale trend lines. Line plots. So really, what we did, these are just line charts. That's the only option we have for the charting system. And in terms of the interpolation, just really all the data we get from the API. There's no missing data, really. We had no part in how the data is captured. So every single data that's on the API, the server, I should say, um, initially we retrieve all of them, and then if you have specified like the month, then we have on the backend side there's an option to capture data a specific amount of time. We just add that in the application.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but first thing, when you're doing any kind of plotting, you have to have some form of interpolation, whether it's B-splines or whatever, to actually draw the graph. So, as you guys could tell me which one you're using, or at least be able to figure out how you're doing the rendering. And secondly, whenever you're using any kind of data visualization system, there is always missing data, and you have to figure out how to correctly interpret it. Some systems will treat it as not a number in the database, but there's usually a clear representation for what is considered no data captured at that particular time interval for whatever reason, and you have to factor that in with how you actually render the final output. So it's something we're going to consider for the future. But any logging system you have, there will always be missing data. And then there's a whole field about how to interpret and accommodate and also interpolate, extrapolate for when you have missing data scenarios.
Oh, okay. There's a question.
Yeah, so Sheldon, the way it operates is that the API's backend determines the missing values or the lack of values and sends not the numbers back through to the mobile app and also to the web app. So it handles that, and it's up to the web front end people or the mobile app to figure out how to interpret the not the number stuff.
Okay, thank you.
And so there's another question we have. Do we have any extensions for advanced options such as anomaly detection? Not at the moment, but that's something that we could take into consideration. And then we have we also have Jeff Wellington from Rail Decoy. He's asking a question: did you leverage any type of data caching?
So only the data caching that we have is just for the rendering the different data point in the listings. So you wouldn't have to keep loading them, fetching it from the APIs. It's just stored locally. But we weren't able to implement caching for the time series data itself. So every time you go on the chart screen, it has to be loaded. But that's something we want to fix in the future. It's just that I was able to get around it as yet because we're still learning how to cache data in Flutter, but I didn't have enough time.
So building on that comment, the backend API uses Python and Python Flask, and also Python's GraphQL implementation, and we have caching built into some of the Flask and GraphQL routes automatically. So there is some amount of cache on the server side. So he's also asked the question, did you leverage a design tool to lay out the interface prior to coding?
I mean, I think my partner used Figma, and we collaborated and worked on a design. So yeah, it was really Figma we used when we were doing the interface design part of the application.
Thank you for listening. If you are interested in participating, donating, or sponsoring our activities, then please visit our website at palisados.org. This is the Palisados Foundation.